Derek Marshall's voice was cold and dismissive. You need to stop what you're doing. Everything within community boundaries must comply with our standards. Your uncle had agreements with us. You inherited his obligations. It's like 3 weeks could. Erase what a 1975 ground lease had proven for 49 years. Like 40 years of occupation could override the fact that his entire community sat on land he rented for $2,000 annually. What he didn't know, I had the expired lease agreement showing his rental term ended 3 years ago, and the survey proving every home in Silverbrook State sat inside my 1,800 acre property line. This wasn't a legitimate claim or mutual understanding. 60 luxury homes worth $30 to $40 million combined. A ground lease expired in 2021 that Derek knew about and deliberately hid. An HOA president who'd embezzled $265,000 from member dues while telling homeowners they owned land they were only renting. Derek made the mistake every HOA president makes, assuming a young, broke heir wouldn't check the county records or wouldn't find the folder marked "Do Not Lose," proving his 40-year empire was built on an expired $2,000 lease. He assumed wrong. Over 8 months, I watched Derek Marshall discover what happens when you let a ground lease expire hoping the landowner dies before noticing. Sue the actual owner for $2.5 million. Tell a judge that 40 years of paying rent creates ownership. This is the story of how an HOA president lost his position, his wealth, his marriage, and his career because he couldn't answer one question the state auditor asked. Did you tell homeowners the lease expired? Not because I wanted to destroy him. Because property law doesn't care how long you occupied the land or how much you invested. It cares whose name is on the deed. And what happens when you spend 40 years treating a landlord like a problem instead of renewing the lease that kept you legal? But let me start from the beginning. Before we dive into, I'd love to know where you're listening from today. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons for more interesting stories. It's just like this. I was about to raise someone's rent by 500%. I just didn't know it yet. The man in the Range Rover was blocking my driveway and he looked like he wanted to fight. You need to stop what you're doing right now. I'm Cassie Brennan, environmental consultant, drowning in student loan debt from my master's degree. 3 weeks ago, my Uncle Raymond died and left me 1,800 acres in rural Montana. 1,800 acres. I still couldn't wrap my head around it. Uncle Ray and I weren't close. He was my dad's brother, lived alone for 40 years. When the lawyer called, I thought it was a mistake. But the deed was real. Forested land, a lake, an old homestead cabin, and apparently a problem. I'd been spending weekends at the cabin, fixing the porch, clearing trails, planning a sustainable forestry project to generate income, maybe enough to finally kill those loan payments. I hadn't explored the whole property yet. 1,800 acres is massive. I'd focused on the cabin and the immediate surroundings. That's why. I didn't know about the luxury community on the eastern section until the man showed up. He climbed out of the Range Rover like he owned the place, mid-50s, polo shirt, expensive watch, hair that cost more to maintain than my monthly rent. Are you Cassie Brennan? Yeah, who are you? Derek Marshall, president of the Silverbrook Estates Homeowners Association. He walked toward me, phone already out. We need to talk about your unauthorized activities. My what? Cabin modifications, operating vehicles without permits. He started taking photos of my truck, the cabin, the porch boards I was replacing. Everything within community boundaries must comply with our standards. I set down my hammer. I'm not in your community. This is my land. Derek's smile was ice. No. Your uncle had agreements with us. Covenants, restrictions, obligations. You inherited all of it. I inherited land, not obligations. That's not how property law works. He stopped taking photos, looked at me like I was a child. You need to submit architectural plans for cabin repairs. Get approval before clearing vegetation. Stop using the eastern access road that's for Silverbrook residents. My brain stuttered. But you're telling me I need HOA permission to fix my own cabin? I'm telling you there are rules. Your uncle respected them. You should too. He pocketed his phone. Seize all activities until you've submitted proper applications. Otherwise, we'll take legal action. For fixing a porch, for violating agreements. Your uncle made, he walked back to his Range Rover. You'll be hearing from our attorney. I suggest you cooperate. He drove off, leaving dust and confusion in equal measure. I called the estate lawyer that night. Tom? What's Silverbrook Estates? Pause. The HOA community on the eastern portion of your property. Why? Their president just threatened to sue me for fixing my cabin. That's odd. Hold on. I heard papers shuffling. Your uncle owned the entire 1,800 acres. The HOA sits on his now year land. Might be old agreements, but I'd need to review them. My stomach dropped. Wait, the HOA is on my land? According to the deed, yes. The whole property transferred to you. I hung up, spread every inheritance document across the cabin's kitchen table. The deed, survey maps, tax records. The property deed was dense, legal, language, metes and bounds, pages of descriptions. But the boundary was clear. 1,800 acres. Everything included. I pulled up the county GIS map on my laptop, traced the property. Line with shaking fingers, the boundary ran straight through Silverbrook Estates. Not around it. Through it, the gated entrance, my land. The clubhouse, my land. Those 60 luxury homes with their perfect lawns and Range Rovers, all sitting on my land. I zoomed in closer. Every single structure, every tennis court, every manicured garden sat inside my property boundaries. Holy shit. I grabbed Uncle Ray's 2015 survey. Professional work, updated markers, crystal clear. Silverbrook Estates didn't just touch my property. It sat entirely within it. My hands went numb. I checked the tax records. All 1,800 acres listed under Raymond Brennan, now transferred to Cassie. Brennan, no carve-outs, no exceptions. Derek Marshall's community was built on my land, which meant his HOA authority, his rules, his threats, none of it applied to me. The room tilted. I sat down hard. 60 homes, 60 families. A clubhouse, tennis courts, a pool, millions of dollars in real estate. On land I owned? Uncle Ray, I whispered to the empty cabin. Why didn't you tell them? There had to be agreements, leases, easements, something. Uncle Ray wouldn't have just let them build without permission. Would he? I pulled out my phone, Googled property rights, Montana ground lease. 3 a.m., still reading. The coffee was cold, my eyes burned, but I couldn't stop. Bodie. Best buried in Uncle Ray's files, I'd found something else. A folder labeled Silverbrook, Do Not Lose. Inside, a ground lease agreement dated 1975, 49 years old, and according to the termination date, it had expired 3 years ago. Derek Marshall's community had been living on my land without a valid lease for 3 years. My phone buzzed. Email notification. Derek's attorney already sending threats. I stared at that lease agreement. At the expiration date. At the section labeled Renewal Terms, NON1. Derek thought he could intimidate me. Thought I was just some clueless inheritor who'd roll over. He had no idea what he'd just started, or what Uncle Ray had left me the tools to finish. The surveyor's name was Beth Kowalski. 60-something. Drove a pickup older than me, brought equipment that looked military grade. You want me to verify the entire eastern boundary? She asked, studying Uncle Ray's 2015 survey. Every inch, I said. I need to know exactly where my property line runs through that HOA community. She nodded. Didn't ask why. Give me 2 days? While Beth worked, I dug through Uncle Ray's files. The folder labeled Silverbrook, Do Not Lose, had more than just the lease. There were letters. Decades of correspondence between Uncle Ray and someone named Gerald Hoffman, original developer of Silverbrook Estates. The ground lease was dated May 1975, 9 years. Annual rent, $2,000. $2,000? For land that now held 60 luxury homes. I did the math. Over 49 years, Uncle Ray had collected $98,000 total. Those homes were worth, I pulled up Zillow, between $600,000 and $1.2 million each. Millions of dollars in real estate sitting on land rented for the cost of a used car. The lease terms were clear. 99-year duration, $2,000 annual payment, no renewal clause, no purchase option. Expiration date, May 15th, 2021. 3 years ago. I found the payment records. Every May, like clockwork, $2,000 deposited into a trust account managed by Hoffman and Associates law firm. Auto pay setup, probably running on decades-old instructions. Nobody had noticed the lease expired. Not the law firm. Not the HOA. Not Uncle Ray before he died. Maybe Uncle Ray had noticed. Maybe that's why he left me this folder. Beth called on day 3. You need to see this. I met her at the Silverbrook entrance. She had a laptop showing GPS overlay maps, survey data, the works. Your property line runs here. She traced a path on the screen. Straight through the community, the entrance, clubhouse, tennis courts, all on your land. Every single home sits inside your boundaries. You're certain? Markers match your uncle's 2015 survey perfectly. This isn't even close. They're not on the edge of your property. They're deep inside it. She zoomed in. 40 to 60 feet past your boundary line, depending on location. My chest felt tight. Can you document this? Official report? Already done. She handed me a USB drive. Full survey verification, GPS coordinates, photographs of boundary markers. This will hold up anywhere. I sent Derek an email that night. Professional direct, Mr. Marshall. I've had the property professionally surveyed. Silverbrook Estates sits entirely on my land. I've also discovered the ground lease expired in May 2021. We need to discuss new lease terms or transition plans. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. Cassie Brennan. Attached. Beth's survey report and a copy of the expired lease. His response came in 40 minutes. Ms. Brennan, we've been here for 40 years. This is our community. Whatever lease you think you found is irrelevant. We own this land through adverse possession. Contact our attorney if you have further questions. Derek Marshall. That was it. No negotiation. No discussion. I called the estate lawyer. Tom, can they claim adverse possession? Not if they've been paying rent. Adverse possession requires hostile use, occupying land without permission. Paying a lease negates that completely. He paused. What was the rent? $2,000 a year. Silence. Then, for 60 homes? Yeah. Cassie, you need a property attorney. Today, I hired Rebecca Chen. 40s, sharp as broken glass, 20 years of real estate law experience. She read the lease in 30 seconds. This expired 3 years ago. No renewal terms. They've been holding over as tenants at sufferance. What does that mean? It means they're technically trespassing. You can evict them or negotiate new terms. She looked up. How much do you want to charge? My student loans flashed in my mind. $87,000 in debt, payments I could barely afford. What's fair market rate for land like this? Rebecca pulled up comparables. Ground lease for this size, this location, supporting 60 homes. Minimum $10,000 annually? That's still cheap. $10,000, 5 times what Uncle Ray charged? Do it, I said. The certified letter went out the next morning. Legal letterhead, Rebecca's signature, attachments proving everything. To the Silverbrook Estates HOA, the ground lease for the property occupied by your community expired May 15th, 2021. As current landowner, I am offering new lease terms. $10,000 annually for a 30-year lease. If these terms are unacceptable, you have 90 days to vacate the property. Please respond within 14 days. Derek's attorney responded in 6. Not acceptance. Not negotiation. Threat. Ms. Brennan is attempting to extort our clients through fraudulent claims of land ownership. Silverbrook Estates has owned this property for decades. Ms. Brennan's continued harassment will result in legal action for interference with property rights, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and defamation. Rebecca read it and laughed. He's bluffing. This is what they do when they have no case. What do? We wait. Discovery will destroy them. I started digging into Silverbrook's public records. HOA meeting minutes, financial disclosures, all posted online per state law. Residents paid $800 monthly in HOA dues. 60 homes? That's $576,000 annually. I found the budget reports. Where was that money going? Landscaping? $180,000. Clubhouse maintenance? $95,000. Municipal fees? $2,000. Municipal fees. The ground lease payment buried in a line item nobody questioned. I checked the HOA disclosure documents, what they gave homeowners when they bought properties. Not one mentioned a ground lease. Every document said residents owned their land, fee simple. Outright ownership. They had no idea they were living on rented land. I found the HOA Facebook group. 600 members, mostly residents and their families. Posts about community events, complaints about landscaping, arguments over pool rules. Nothing about a ground lease. Nothing about my uncle. Nothing suggesting anyone knew the truth. Derek had hidden it for years. Rebecca filed our response to Derek's threats. Included the survey, the expired lease, the payment records, everything. Discovery starts in 2 weeks, she said. They'll have to produce every document about the land acquisition. And when they can't prove they own it, she didn't finish. Didn't need to. Derek's 40-year empire was built on land he didn't own, under a lease he'd let expire, charging residents for ownership they didn't have. And now the actual owner was standing at the gate with a deed and a bill. My phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Brennan? This is Sarah Hoffman. I live in Silverbrook. Can we talk? Sarah Hoffman met me at a coffee shop 30 miles outside Silverbrook. She didn't want to be seen. I'm a third-grade teacher, she said, hands wrapped around her mug. I bought my home in Silverbrook 5 years ago. Saved for 10 years for the down payment. She looked up at me. They told me I own the land. Be simple. Outright ownership. Is that not true? I pulled out my laptop, showed her the survey, the expired lease, the property deed. She went pale. We're on rented land? The lease expired 3 years ago. You've been living on my land without a valid agreement. Derek told us. She stopped. Started again. When I bought, the deed had this weird clause. Subject to ground lease? I asked Derek what it meant. He said it was an old technicality from the 70s. Already handled, nothing to worry about. It wasn't handled. It expired. Sarah's hands shook. I paid $640,000 for my house. If I don't own the land underneath it, you own the house. But the land is mine. I paused. I'm offering a new lease. $10,000 a year for the whole community. That's $166 per home annually. Less than $15 a month per household. Derek said you're trying to extort us. Derek's lying. She studied my face, then nodded slowly. I believe you, and I'm not the only one who has questions. Derek called an emergency HOA meeting 2 nights later. Mandatory attendance. The clubhouse was packed. Standing room only, 60-plus homeowners. Tension so thick you could choke on it. I wasn't invited, but Sarah texted me updates in real time. Derek stood at the front, slideshow ready. We're facing an attack on our community, he started. A woman claiming to own our land is demanding we pay her thousands of dollars or vacate our homes. Photo of me on the screen. Taken from my Facebook profile. Cassie Brennan inherited property from her uncle. Now she's attempting to extort this community through fraudulent land claims. Sarah texted. He's showing legal documents. Says our ownership is valid. People are getting angry at you. I texted back. Ask him to show proof they own the land. Title insurance. Purchase records. 3 minutes later, he says it's confidential legal strategy. Won't show documents. Derek rallied them. Sarah's texts came faster. He's saying you're trying to destroy families. Claims you rejected all compromise. Says you want to bulldoze homes and develop the land. Every word a lie. But 60 scared homeowners believed him because he'd been their president for 12 years. Then Sarah stood up. I know, because she stopped texting and called me. I could hear her voice through the phone, shaky but determined. Derek, can you show us the title proving the HOA owns this land? Silence on the line. Sarah, we've been over this. No, we haven't. Show us the deed, the purchase records. That we own the land under our homes. This isn't the time. This is exactly the time. Another voice, male, deeper. I'm Marcus Webb, retired police officer. I've lived here 8 years. Show us the ownership documents. Derek's voice came through tight. Our attorney is handling this. I'm not going to compromise our legal position by showing us documents that don't exist. A woman's voice now. I'm Jennifer Park. I run a title search company. I can pull records tomorrow. Should I? The meeting erupted. Voices overlapping, people demanding answers. Sarah came back on the phone. Derek just left, stormed out, meetings falling apart. Marcus called me the next morning. We need to talk. Me, Sarah, Jennifer. Can you meet us? We met at the same coffee shop. 3 homeowners who'd done what Derek hoped no one would do. They'd checked the records themselves. Marcus laid out documents. I pulled the title history last night. The land was never sold to Silverbrook. It's been owned by the Brennan family since 1962. Ground lease signed in 1975, expired 2021. Derek lied to us, Jennifer said. She was maybe 40, business casual, eyes red like she'd been crying. I bought my home 3 years ago. Disclosure documents said fee simple ownership. They never mentioned a lease. She showed me her deed, buried in page 7 tiny print, subject to ground lease agreement dated May 1975. I asked about this. She said, Derek told me it was handled. Decades old, not relevant. He knew it was expiring, I said quietly. He had to know. Marcus pulled up more documents on his laptop. I got the HOA financial records. Public information, anyone can request them. Look at the budget from 2020. Line item, municipal fees, $2,000. Same in 2021. Same in 2022, 2023. Derek's been paying your uncle's lease from our dues, Marcus said. Hidden it as municipal fees. Nobody questioned it because it's such a small amount. $2,000 out of $576,000 annual budget. Pocket change. Invisible? Here's what I don't understand, Jennifer said. Why didn't he tell us when it expired? Why hide it? Sarah answered quietly. Because if we knew, we'd panic. Property values would crash. People would sue him. Board would remove him. She looked at me. He was hoping your uncle would die without anyone noticing. And Uncle Ray had died, but he'd left me the folder. The lease. The truth. Derek's plan had one flaw. Me. The HOA attorney, Derek's attorney, withdrew 3 days later. Sent a curt email to Derek, CCing the board. Title search confirms Ms. Brennan owns the land. Ground lease expired 2021. HOA has no legal claim to ownership. I cannot in good conscience continue representing you in this matter. Sarah forwarded it to me. The board's in chaos. Derek's refusing to negotiate with you? We're demanding a special meeting to vote on your lease offer. Can you force a meeting? State law says 20% of homeowners can call one. We have 40 signatures already. But Derek found a loophole. As president, he had the authority to postpone meetings for legal review. He pushed it back 30 days. Then he filed a lawsuit, not the HOA suing me. Derek Marshall personally suing me? Interference with property rights, intentional infliction of emotional distress, defamation and abuse of process. He was claiming I was harassing him, damaging his reputation, trying to steal land his community had rightfully occupied for 40 years. The filing amount, $2.5 million in damages. 3 years of Rebecca read it and shook her head. This is retaliation, pure intimidation. He's trying to drain your resources so you'll give up. Will it work? Only if you let it. She looked at me. Discovery goes both ways. He'll have to produce every document proving the HOA owns that land. And when he can't, my phone buzzed. Text from Sarah. Emergency board meeting tonight. Derek called it. Says he has new evidence. You're defrauding us. 60+ people showing up. Then another text from Marcus. Don't worry, we're ready for him. Then Jennifer, bring popcorn. This is going to be good. Derek thought he could bury the truth under legal threats and community loyalty. He forgot that some people actually check the receipts. And he was about to find out what happens when the people you've been lying to start asking questions you can't answer. Discovery is a beautiful thing. It forces people to hand over documents they'd rather burn. Rebecca filed our discovery request the day after Derek sued me. All communications regarding the ground lease from 2018 forward, all financial records. Everything Derek fought it, filed motions claiming attorney-client privilege, said our requests were harassing. The judge shut him down. Mr. Hobhouse, Marshall, you filed this lawsuit. Produce the documents or I'll dismiss your case. The boxes arrived 3 weeks later. Rebecca and I spent 2 days reading. What we found made me sick. Email from Derek to the board, March 2021. 2 months before the lease expired. The Brennan lease expires in May. Contacting Raymond risks him raising rates. My recommendation: do nothing. If we ignore it, maybe they won't notice. I read it twice. My hands started shaking. Not from fear, from rage. He'd known. For years. And he'd deliberately chosen to hide it. Board treasurer's response suggested negotiating. Derek shot it down. We've invested millions. If it comes to a legal fight, we'll win on equitable grounds. Rebecca looked up from another email. Cassie, look at this one. Derek to his attorney, June 2021. Raymond Brennan is 78 and has no heirs we know of. We can wait this out. I stood up, paced to the window. Uncle Ray died 8 months after that email. Derek had been betting on him dying before anyone noticed. That son of a bitch, I said quietly. It gets worse. Rebecca showed me the financial records. Derek hadn't just hidden the lease. He'd been stealing. $47,000 in legal research, country club fees and golf outings. $52,000 to a consulting company registered to his home address. $38,000 to his brother-in-law's landscaping company with no competitive bid. $180,000 in 5 years, funneled from homeowner dues into his pocket. We've got him, Rebecca said. On all of it. Derek's deposition was a massacre. I watched via video feed as Rebecca's co-counsel walked him through the emails. Mr. Marshall, this email shows you knew the lease would expire. Why didn't you negotiate renewal? Derek shifted in his chair. We believed we had equitable claim to the land. 40 years of occupation. While paying rent. A nominal fee. Rent is rent. You can't claim adverse possession while paying for permission to be there. Derek's jaw tightened. We invested millions. We thought we owned it. You thought wrong. Did you disclose the expired lease to homeowners? We were handling it internally. For 3 years? Silence. Then the financial records. Derek's face went red as his country club expenses were read aloud. His fake consulting company. His brother-in-law's contract. These are legitimate business expenses, he insisted. Business expenses paid to a company at your home address? The deposition ended with Derek looking cornered and desperate. 2 weeks later, the judge dismissed his lawsuit. Case dismissed with prejudice? This appears designed solely to harass the defendant. Ms. Brennan, file for sanctions? I felt something crack open in my chest. Relief. Vindication. Victory. Derek had tried to bury me, and he'd just buried himself instead. Community meeting happened on a Thursday night. Not at the Silverbrook Clubhouse. Derek still controlled that. The public library main meeting room, 70 people showed up. Every chair filled. People standing against walls. Sarah stood at the front with Marcus and Jennifer. They had printouts, a projector, evidence stacked in folders. Thank you all for coming, Sarah started. Her voice shook slightly. We've discovered things about our HOA leadership that you need to know. She put up the first slide. Derek's email about ignoring the expired lease? The room went silent. Our president knew the ground lease expired 3 years ago. He chose not to renew it. Chose not to tell any of us? Sarah's voice got stronger. And when the actual landowner showed up asking for fair terms, he lied to us. Told us we owned the land. Filed a lawsuit to intimidate her. Marcus took over. Showed the financial audit. Line by line, $180,000 in questionable expenses. A woman in the third row stood up. That's our money. Our dues. Yes, Marcus said. He's been using community funds for personal expenses while telling us we needed to raise dues to cover maintenance. Jennifer displayed Cassie's lease offer on the screen. $10,000 annually for 30 years? That's $14 per household per month. And Derek refused it without telling us it existed. The room erupted. Voices overlapping, people shouting. He stole from us. My dues paid for his golf membership. We could lose our homes because he was too arrogant to negotiate. Sarah held up a petition. We're calling for Derek Marshall's immediate resignation and an emergency election. If you agree, please sign. The line formed instantly. 40 people? 50. 60. I watched from the back corner, hoodie up. Woman I didn't recognize spotted me anyway. She walked over. You're Cassie Brennan. My stomach dropped. Here it comes. The anger. The blame. Thank you, she said quietly. My family bought our home 2 years ago. Derek told us we owned the land. If you hadn't pushed this, we never would have known. Another resident approached. Then another. Not angry. Grateful. You could have just evicted us. You offered fair terms instead. Derek made you the villain. We're sorry we believed him. 500 signatures in 2 days? 3 board members resigned? Derek refused. His email to residents was pure desperation. I've served this community faithfully for 12 years. The witch hunt is orchestrated by ungrateful people who don't understand my sacrifices. The election was called for the following Tuesday. 60 homeowners voted. I wasn't there. Wasn't my community, not my place. But Sarah called me after. I could hear celebration in the background. Derek got 2 votes, she said. Him and his wife. And you? 58. I closed my eyes. Exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. His wife left the meeting crying, Sarah continued, voice softer now. Derek stood up, said we'd all regret this, and walked out. Nobody followed him? I met Derek face to face 3 days later. He'd requested a meeting through his attorney to discuss transition terms. We met at a neutral location, conference room at Rebecca's office. Derek looked smaller than I remembered. No Range Rover confidence, no condescending smile. Ms. Brennan, he started. I think we got off on the wrong foot. You sued me for $2.5 million. Legal strategy, nothing personal. He tried to smile. It died fast. I'm willing to support the new lease terms if we can settle the financial audit quietly. I stared at him. You stole $180,000 from your neighbors? Creative accounting? Standard practice in HOA management. It's embezzlement. His face hardened. You don't understand what it takes to run a community like Silverbrook. The sacrifices, the responsibility. I understand you knew my uncle's lease expired and you hid it. Gambled that he'd die before anyone noticed. I leaned forward. You lost that bet. Derek stood up. This isn't over? Yeah, I said quietly. It is. Rebecca and I sat in silence. State Attorney General received the financial records yesterday, she said. They're opening an investigation. Sarah signed the new lease that Friday. 30 years, $10,000 annually. Terms protecting both parties. What happens to Derek? She asked. That's up to the state. And your homeowners if they want to pursue civil charges. She nodded. Looked at the lease. Cassie, 40 homeowners asked me to ask you something. Would you be willing to sell us the land under our homes? Not the whole property, just our individual lots. My breath caught. I hadn't expected that. We'd pay fair market value, Sarah continued. appraised independently. Some of us want to own our land outright instead of leasing. I thought about Uncle Ray, about why he'd leased instead of selling, about it protecting the land. Let me think about it, I said. Because the lease was signed. Derek was finished. Justice was happening. But the real decision, what to do with 1,800 acres, 60 families, and a legacy I still didn't fully understand, that was just beginning. Sarah signed the lease on a Friday afternoon. Marcus and Jennifer witnessed. 30 years, $10,000 annually, protection for both parties. Thank you, Sarah said quietly, for not destroying us when you could have. I'd been thinking about that. About the 40 families who'd bought homes believing they owned the land. About the teacher, the retired cop, the small business owner who'd done nothing wrong except trust Derek. I want to offer something else, I said. Anyone who wants to purchase the land under their home, I'll sell it. Fair market value, independently appraised. You can own your lot outright instead of leasing. Sarah's eyes widened. You'd do that? It's not right that you pay for a house but don't own the ground underneath. If you want to buy your lot, we'll make it work. She pulled out her phone, started texting. I know at least a dozen families will jump at this. The appraisals took 2 weeks. Independent firm. Market rates for residential lots in rural Montana. $15,000 to $25,000 per lot, depending on size and location. Fair, not gouging. Homeowners chose to purchase. I met with each family personally, signed individual deeds, watched their faces as they realized they finally actually owned their land. Couple in their 60s, retired, broke down crying at the signing. We've lived here 12 years, the husband said. Derek told us we owned it. Finding out we didn't, we thought we'd lose everything. You're not losing anything, I said. You're gaining what should have been yours from the start. 20 families chose to stay on the lease. Lower upfront cost, same security. That was fine too. The money from the sales went into a trust, $680,000 total. More money than I'd ever seen in my life. My student loans disappeared overnight. The rest, I had plans for that. Derek didn't go quietly. He filed ethics complaints against Sarah, Marcus, and Jennifer with the state HOA oversight board. Claimed they'd conspired with an outsider to stage an illegal coup. The board dismissed them in 48 hours. Sent a response letter I got to read. Mr. Monteraire, Marshall's complaints lack merit. The election was conducted properly. The new board has legal authority to negotiate lease terms. This office finds no evidence of misconduct. Then Derek tried the insurance angle. Contacted Silverbrook's property insurance carrier. Claimed the new lease terms violated coverage agreements. That backfired spectacularly. The insurance investigator called Sarah. Did your previous board president disclose that the homes sit on leased land? No, Sarah said. He told us we owned it fee simple. Silence on the line. That's insurance fraud. We need to see all documentation immediately. Turns out Derek had been collecting premiums for land coverage the HOA never had legal right to insure. For 15 years, insurance company opened an investigation. So did the state. The state HOA oversight board's audit went deep. Forensic accountants traced every expense Derek had approved over 6 years. The $180,000 I'd found? That was just the obvious stuff. They found another $85,000. Consulting fees to shell companies. Community improvement contracts awarded without bids. Reimbursements for expenses that never happened. Total embezzlement. $265,000 over 6 years. Derek's lawyer tried to negotiate. Offered to pay back $100,000 and resign from all HOA positions statewide. The state attorney general rejected it. Filed criminal charges, embezzlement, insurance fraud, breach of fiduciary duty. Derek's trial was set for 8 months out. But he couldn't make bail. Too much of his wealth was tied up in assets he'd bought with stolen money. I drove past Derek's house one afternoon. The for sale sign went up on a Tuesday. $900,000 listing price. Gorgeous home, best lot in Silverbrook, overlooking the lake. Sarah called me that night. Derek's selling. Court-ordered restitution? He has to pay back what he stole before trial. How's his wife? Moved out 2 weeks ago. Filed for divorce. She claimed she didn't know about the embezzlement. Sarah paused. I believe her. Derek kept the finances close. Even board members didn't see everything. The house sold in 30 days. $875,000? Every penny went into an escrow account for restitution. Derek moved out in the middle of the night. No goodbye, no final speech, just gone. Someone spotted him 3 weeks later working at a sporting goods store, 2 states over, making $18 an hour, living in a studio apartment, waiting for trial. Karma didn't just hit Derek, it demolished him. The first year's lease payment was $10,000. I deposited the check and immediately spent half of it. Called a conservation attorney. I want to protect 1,600 acres from development. Forever, we created a conservation easement. Legal agreement that preserved the wilderness, the forest, the lake. No subdivision. No commercial development. Just land staying wild. I kept 200 acres around the cabin for myself. The rest? Protected permanently. The paperwork was filed in November. Ironclad. Even if I sold the property someday, the easement stayed. Uncle Ray's land would never become another Silverbrook. I visited his grave on the anniversary of his death. Brought flowers, sat in the grass. You knew, didn't you? I said quietly. You knew Derek would let the lease expire. Knew I'd have to fight for this? The wind moved through the trees. I pulled out the folder he'd left me, the one labeled, Do Not Lose. The lease and surveys? I'd found a letter, addressed to me, dated 2 weeks before he died. I'd read it 100 times, but I read it again. Cassie, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've inherited a problem. Derek Marshall thinks he owns land he only rents. He'll try to intimidate you. Don't let him. The lease expires in 2021. I didn't renew it on purpose. I wanted to see what you'd do. This land matters. Protect it. But also be fair to the families who built homes there in good faith. They're not the enemy. Derek is. Don't back down. And whatever you decide about the land, make sure it lasts. Love, Uncle Ray. He left me a test, and a gift, and a responsibility. I'd passed the test. Derek had failed his, and now 1,600 acres would stay wild forever, while 60 families finally own their homes for real. Uncle Ray would have approved. Marcus became president. Sarah took treasurer. Jennifer joined the board as secretary. First board meeting under new leadership, they did something Derek never had. They opened the books to everyone. Every expense over $100 gets posted publicly, Marcus announced at the community meeting. Monthly financial reports emailed to all homeowners. No more hidden fees, no more slush funds. 60 families applauded. Some were crying. Sarah implemented zero-based budgeting. Every dollar accounted for. Contract put out for competitive bid. The landscaping contract that had gone to Derek's brother-in-law were bid. Saved the community $18,000 annually. Property values stabilized within 3 months. The panic that had gripped Silverbrook when the lease scandal broke. Would homes be worthless? Evaporated once 40 families owned their land and the other 20 had secure lease terms. A real estate agent called me. Ms. Brennan, homes in Silverbrook are selling again. Buyers love that residents actually own their land now. You saved that community. I hadn't set out to save anything. I just wanted what was mine. The relationship between Silverbrook and me shifted. Not adversaries anymore. Neighbors? I granted the community access to my trails and the lake. Written agreement, signed by both parties. Residents could hike, fish, kayak. In return, they maintained the trails and followed leave no trace principles. Sarah organized volunteer days. Families came out to clear brush, mark trails, build birdhouses. Kids who'd grown up in Silverbrook learned the names of trees, identified animal tracks, understood the land they'd been living on without really seeing it. Retired biology teachers started leading nature walks. 20 people showed up the first week, 40 the second. The land became something shared, not fought over. I worked with the conservation attorney to create a wildlife corridor. 1,500 acres connecting my property to national forest land, protected permanently. No development, no subdivision, just migration routes for elk, habitat for bears, nesting grounds for eagles. The easement was filed in January. Permanent? Even if I died tomorrow. Even if the property changed hands 100 times, those 1,500 acres would stay wild. Uncle Ray's legacy locked in forever. Derek's criminal case dragged on for 8 months. His attorney tried every delay tactic, every motion to dismiss. The evidence was overwhelming. Forensic accountants traced every stolen dollar. Email records showed intent. Homeowner testimonies painted a picture of systematic fraud. 3 days before trial, Derek took a plea deal. Guilty to embezzlement and fraud, 5 years probation, full restitution, $265,000 paid back to the HOA, permanently banned from serving on any HOA board in the state. No jail time. The prosecutor said Derek's age, lack of prior record, and agreement to pay back everything influenced the sentence. Some Silverbrook residents were angry about that, wanted to see him behind bars. Marcus was philosophical. He lost everything. His home, his reputation, his marriage, his community. That's punishment enough. I agreed. Derek's life as he knew it was over. Prison would have just been a building. The community hosted an appreciation event in May. Barbecue at the clubhouse, families I'd sold land to, residents on the lease, new board members. Sarah gave a speech. 6 months ago, we thought we were going to lose our homes. Cassie could have evicted us. Could have sold to developers. Could have made our lives hell. She looked at me. Instead, she offered fair terms. Sold us our land at honest prices. Protected the wilderness we all love. Cassie, thank you. Everyone stood up. Applauded. I wasn't good at this part. The gratitude. The attention. I gave an awkward wave. Felt my face go hot. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, came up to me after. My mom says you saved our house? Your mom paid for your house, I said. I just made sure she actually owned it. The girl handed me a drawing. Crayon sketch of the lake, trees, a cabin. I drew your land. It's pretty. I kept that drawing. Framed it, hung it in Uncle Ray's cabin. I never wanted confrontation. Never wanted to be the villain in Derek's story, or the hero in Silverbrook's. I just wanted fair treatment of an inheritance I didn't ask for but took seriously. Uncle Ray left me a test. Stand firm or fold, fight or flee. I stood firm. And in the end, 60 families got the ownership they'd paid for. 1,500 acres got protection they needed. And Derek got the consequences he'd earned. That felt like justice. 6 months after Derek moved out, someone spotted him in Idaho, working the customer service desk at a sporting goods store, helping customers return fishing gear, processing exchanges, wearing a name tag. The person who saw him, a former Silverbrook resident visiting family, didn't approach, just watched for a moment. Derek looked tired. Older. Grew smaller somehow. When the story got back to Silverbrook, nobody celebrated. A few people felt vindicated. Most just felt sad. He did it to himself, Jennifer said when we met for coffee. All he had to do was renew the lease. Or tell us the truth. But his ego wouldn't let him. She was right. Derek's downfall wasn't my doing. It was his pride, his greed, his absolute certainty that he could bend reality to his assumptions. I'd just been the person who showed up with the deed and asked for what was fair. Karma didn't need my help. It just needed time. And in the end, Derek Marshall, wealth management executive, HOA president for 12 years, man who thought he could wait out a landowner and claim an empire, was selling hunting licenses for $18 an hour in a town where nobody knew his name. That wasn't revenge. That was just the bill finally coming due. 1 year after I inherited Uncle Ray's land, I stood at the edge of the property and barely recognized it. Not because it had changed. Because I finally understood it. Silverbrook Estates was thriving. Marcus ran the HOA like a business should be run. Transparent, accountable, boring in all the right ways. Monthly budgets posted online. Competitive bids for every contract. No surprises. Property values had climbed 12% in a year. Homes that had been unsellable during the scandal were now getting multiple offers. Buyers loved the certainty. Either you owned your lot outright or you had a 30-year lease with clear terms. The fear was gone, replaced with something nobody had felt under Derek: stability. My sustainable forestry project broke ground in March. Selective logging, conservation-focused, creating jobs for locals who knew the land. We hired 8 people full-time: foresters, trail maintenance crew, wildlife monitors, good jobs that protected the ecosystem instead of destroying it. A logger named Tom, 62, worked these mountains his whole life, shook my hand on his first day. Thought I'd never see sustainable forestry in my lifetime. Thank you for doing this right. The project would generate income for decades, enough to maintain the conservation easement, pay property taxes, fund what came next. And what came next mattered. Pam ran for County Planning Commission in November, won by 18 points. Campaign focused on one thing: transparency in development contracts. No more backroom deals. No more developers building on land they didn't own. No more HOAs hiding expired leases. What happened in Silverbrook can't happen again, she said at her victory speech. Cassie showed us what standing firm looks like. Now we make sure other communities don't need to fight the same battle. 3 former Silverbrook residents joined her campaign, became vocal advocates for property rights, clear contracts, honest disclosure. Derek's scandal had changed people, made them pay attention, ask questions, demand proof. That was a legacy worth leaving. I visited Uncle Ray's grave on a cold December afternoon, brought flowers, sat on the frozen ground. You left me more than land, I said quietly. You left me a lesson. I told him everything. Derek's arrogance, the lawsuit, the community turning, the families buying their lots, the conservation easement locking 1,600 acres in place forever. You knew Derek would let the lease expire, knew I'd have to fight. I traced his name on the headstone. You were testing me, seeing if I'd fold or stand firm. The wind cut through the cemetery. I pulled my coat tighter. I stood firm, Uncle Ray, and I protected your land. Like you wanted. I pulled out his letter, the one from the folder. Read it one more time. Stand firm. Don't back down. And whatever you decide about the land, make sure it lasts. It would last. The easement guaranteed it. The land would outlive me, outlive Derek, outlive everyone who'd fought over it. That was the point. That was always the point. I used the lease income to establish something permanent. The Raymond Brennan Environmental Scholarship Fund, $5,000 annually for a local student studying environmental science, conservation, or forestry. Funded by Silverbrook's lease payments. The first recipient was a high school senior from the next county over, first in her family to go to college. Shh. Came to the cabin to meet me, thanked me 3 times, couldn't stop smiling. I want to be a wildlife biologist, she said. Study migration patterns, protect habitats. Uncle Ray would have loved that, I told her. The scholarship would run as long as the lease did. 30 years minimum, maybe longer if the 20 families still leasing renewed. Money that Derek had hidden in a slush fund was now sending kids to college. Karma had a sense of irony. Derek's professional life never recovered. His wealth management firm, the one he'd run for 20 years, lost 80% of its clients within 6 months of the scandal. Nobody wanted financial advice from a man who'd embezzled from his neighbors. The firm collapsed. Derek's former partners sued him, claiming his actions destroyed the business. LinkedIn profile went dormant. His professional network vanished. The empire he'd built, reputation, respect, authority, gone. All because he'd been too arrogant to renew a $2,000 lease. My relationship with Silverbrook settled into something comfortable, neighborly. I wasn't part of the HOA, didn't attend meetings or vote on decisions, but I was welcome at community events. Families waved when they saw me on the trails. Kids asked me questions about the wildlife. It was built on respect now, not entitlement, not fear. They knew I owned the land. I knew they'd build homes there in good faith. We coexisted because we'd agreed on fair terms and stuck to them. That's all it ever needed to be. I kept 1,600 acres wild. Open limited public access, permits for hiking, educational groups, research projects. University biology department, contacted me about using the land for field studies? I said yes. Students came out quarterly, studied ecosystems, tracked wildlife, learned conservation practices. The land became a classroom, a refuge, a reminder that not everything needs to be developed, subdivided, monetized. Some things are worth more left alone. One evening in late spring, I sat on the cabin porch watching the sunset over the lake. The water was glass smooth, mountains purple in the distance. An eagle circled overhead, hunting. This was Uncle Ray's view for 40 years. This quiet, this beauty. He could have sold it, could have subdivided the whole thing, made millions, retired wealthy. Instead, he'd rented a corner to developers for $2,000 a year and kept the rest wild. Not because he needed the money. Because he understood something Derek never did. Land isn't just an asset. It's a responsibility. And the moment you start treating it like something you're entitled to, instead of something you're stewarding, you've already lost. I didn't raise Derek's rent 500% out of greed. I raised it because 40 years of paying $2,000 for land worth millions was never sustainable. It was exploitation disguised as a handshake deal. When Derek tried to bully me into giving up what was legally mine, he forgot something fundamental. Entitlement isn't ownership. Contracts expire. And when you build your empire on someone else's land, while treating the actual owner like a problem, don't be surprised when they show up with a deed and a spine. Derek thought 40 years of occupation meant he'd earned the land, that his investments, his leadership, his vision, gave him more right to it than the person whose name was on the title. He was wrong. Respect isn't inherited. It's earned. Through honesty, fairness, and recognizing that other people's property rights matter as much as your own. Derek learned that the hard way. And karma? Karma doesn't forget. It doesn't rush. It just waits. It waits for leases to expire, for truth to surface, for documentation to prove what arrogance tried to bury. And when the reckoning comes, it doesn't matter how long you've been in charge, how much you've invested, or how entitled you feel. The land remembers who owns it. And the pins in the ground don't lie.